How's it going, guys? Welcome back to another video here on Brass Bang, and today we're talking about this right here. This is the Vortex Strike Eagle 1:6 magnification. It is an LPVO, stands for low power variable optic. In this video today, we're going to talk about this optic right here, LPVOs in general, and why I think this is a great option and why I think you should grab one as well. Stick around for the video. Let's get started. So the situation with LPVOs is a little bit odd. From a glance, from a distance, they look like your standard run-of-the-mill hunting rifle scopes, like a 2:9, 3:9, 4:24, whatever the magnifications are. It kind of just looks like one of those from a distance. It's a normal scope, but in actuality, they are not. LPVO stands for low power variable optic. That low power comes because most of these LPVOs start at 1 power. At 1 power, they have no magnification at all. It is basically like looking at something with your human eye. You're basically kind of like a red dot sight. You look through it, there's no magnification whatsoever. But what these LPVOs allow you to do is, with the turn of a lever, go to, in this case, 6 power. Some of them are 1 to 8 power. Some of them are 1 to 10 power. And so that gets you out to 6 times, 8 times, 10 times magnification. That can be very useful when you're shooting out to farther distances, but all it takes is the turn of this lever back to 1 power, and then you have your close range CQB type distance optics as well. So it's kind of like multiple things in one. You have the 1 power, like a red dot sight, but you also have this weird capability to shoot out to farther distances like a rifle scope would give you. It kind of combines those two, if you will. It's kind of like if a red dot sight and a rifle scope had a baby and this is their offspring. It can kind of do both things, maybe not quite as well as some of those other ones, but it does both pretty dang well. So as I mentioned, at 1 power, these are very, very similar to your standard typical red dot sights. They allow you to pick up your sight picture very quickly and easily, use it at close range, close CQB type distances, and it's very, very effective. The only downside that this would have that a red dot sight does not have is that the red dot sights don't have any sort of eye relief or eye box issues. You can look through the red dot sight from farther away, closer up, you can look at it from the sides, and as long as you can see that dot, it'll look the same and you can take your shot from there. Whereas with these LPVOs, they have a little bit more of the eye box, eye relief issues. So when you look through that sight, you have to be the right distance forward and back to actually get your sight picture. If you're too far forward or too far back, you have these dark shadows surrounding your sight picture, and it can be very, very difficult to get your shot off. And the same thing goes for being too high or too low. You start having the scope shadow come into play. And in some cases, if you're too far right, left, up, down, you're not gonna be able to take your shot at all because you won't be able to see your sight picture. That's a fair point and a real benefit that the red dot sights do have at close range over these LPVOs. Obviously, at farther distances, at 400 or 500 yards, a red dot sight's not gonna cut it, maybe even with the magnifier, might not cut it. This is gonna be able to get you out to those distances. So in some cases, it's gonna be better than the red dot sight. Now let's compare this LPVO at 6 power to your standard typical rifle scope that would be at 6 power. They're gonna be very, very, very similar. The only potential difference would be that the rifle scope, being that it doesn't go all the way down to 1 power, it might start at 3, 4, 5 power. They can work their magic with the glass, and they can make the glass a little bit more clear and maybe a little bit brighter for your rifle scopes. Whereas because this has to do kind of a jack of all trades type thing, getting down to 1 power, but also up to 6 power, it's not gonna be quite as clear or quite as bright when you look through the sight as a rifle scope might be. But that difference is becoming a lot slimmer these days because technology is getting a little bit better, and there's probably not a massive difference there anymore like there may have used to be. The last thing I want to mention about LPVO specifically is that this one here and a lot of others out there are going to have a little dial on the side of it that you can turn to illuminate the reticle. In this case, it's illuminating the reticle red, so it has a red glow. You can change how bright or how dim that is depending on the lighting situation, and that can go a long ways towards kind of evening the gap between this and a red dot sight, because it does allow you to bring that gun up and immediately find that illuminated reticle a lot faster than if it didn't have the illumination. So it's a little bit closer to a red dot sight when you add in that factor, and out at distance, having a little bit of illumination may help you to make out your reticle against a different colored background. And that's all for LPVO specifically. I made another video talking about the LPVO versus the red dot. If you want to check that out, give it a look. But basically, to sum it all up, I do think that LPVOs have a lot of benefits, but there's also a couple downsides like the scope shadow and the eye relief issues like I mentioned. Some of that can be negated by having an offset red dot like I have here, and then you kind of have the best of both worlds. You have the LPVO for your distance shots, and you have the red dot sight for your close-up shots, and I think it's a great setup to work with. But let's move in now to this LPVO specifically, because we haven't even talked about that yet. This optic is a 1 to 6 power, as I mentioned, and that should be enough to get you out to 400 or 500 yards, maybe 600 yards, depending on what kind of shot you are. And for the military, actually, the Army just went with a 1 to 6 power LPVO made by 6 Hour. So I do think if the 1 to 6 power and the LPVO is good enough for the Army, it's good enough for me. I'm gonna stick with that. And side note, I do find it a little interesting that the Army and the Marines now have moved to LPVOs for their primary optics. It just kind of seems like that's where the technology is going. That's where everyone is moving to. So maybe it's the future. The biggest reason I went with this LPVO specifically was the reticle. When I looked through it at the store, I fell in love with it. It's called the BDC reticle. It's made for ARs, so it kind of has that max range of about 600 yards, which is roughly the max effective distance of the 5.56 platform. The BDC3 reticle has that little horseshoe looking thing around the center dot, and that allows you to get a very rough target acquisition without having to perfectly line up your center dot on the target. If you're within maybe 25 yards, you can probably put your target inside of that little horseshoe thing, or put the horseshoe on the target, and you'll be pretty much accurate. Then that center dot is supposed to be used for 50 out to 200 yards. If you do a 50-yard zero, that should get you out to about 200 yards without a whole lot of up and down differences in your shot placement. Then below that, you see you have each of those little hash marks. Those are used for your holds out at the distances. That first set of dotted lines represents 300 yards, then 400 yards, then 500 yards, then 600 yards. And it makes it really easy to know where to hold to get your shots roughly where you want them to be. It may not be perfect, but it gives you a really good place to start at. Not to mention it has left to right wind holds based on how much wind you're experiencing. It's all covered in there, and I really like that reticle. That's why I went with this optic specifically. Back to the body of this LPVO, it has little turret caps so you can unscrew to make your adjustments for left to right, up and down. Screws on very easily, and the adjustments have very nice audible clicks when you are turning them. I love it. There's nothing to complain about. The same thing with the Illumination dial. As you turn that, it's very tactile, audible clicks. You're not going to be wondering how many clicks you've made. It's very easy to keep track of. The throw lever on the zoom here is one of my very few complaints that I do have. It's a little bit stiff. It takes a little bit of muscle and effort to move it. And so if you're in a pinch, if you're trying to do it quickly, it's not the easiest thing to quickly turn. You take some practice to get used to, and it's not a huge deal. It's not a deal breaker by any means for me, but just something that I've noted and something that I've noticed. The lever itself is really nice. It sticks out, I would say, just the perfect amount to where you have something to grab onto to turn the lever, but it's not going to stick out so much that it's getting caught on clothing and all these other things. The ends of the glass have these little protective covers. There's one on the front, one on the back. You can close them and seal them to keep dust from getting in and out of there. I would say ditch those entirely. I keep them on there when this gun is stored, but when I'm out shooting, it's really annoying having those little flaps up there, so just get rid of them and maybe only use them when you're actually storing your gun. Now finally, let's talk about price and value and my final thoughts on this LPVO. It's my very first one, so I can't comment on comparisons between this and other ones besides the fact that I've looked through a number of LPVOs at the store, and I came to this option specifically because of two things. The reticle, as I mentioned, I absolutely love the reticle, and the brightness and clarity of the sight. It seemed like it just fit my eyes well, and the reticle seemed very clear and bright inside of this compared to a few other options out there. That's not to say this is the best option by any means. This is really targeted at like a beginner entry-level type of LPVO. It's only $400 or something like that, in that ballpark, and that's not going to make it a high-tech gadget like the new cutting-edge thing. It's an entry-level basic LPVO, and I think that was perfect for me to start out with, to really get a feel for LPVOs and see if it was a platform that I liked, if it was something that I wanted to delve farther into. And I can honestly say, yeah, I absolutely love this optic, but even more than that, I love the LPVO platform. I've fallen in love with it. I think the versatility that they can give you is unmatched. So would I recommend this Vortex Strike Eagle 1-6 with the BDC3 reticle? Absolutely. I think if you have a red dot sight or iron sights on your rifle and you're looking for something that maybe gets you out a little bit farther, shoots out at farther distances, I think the LPVO is the perfect option. It maintains that ability to keep it at 1 power and shoot at the close distances quickly and easily. You don't really have any problems. I know I mentioned that there's the eye relief, eye box issues, but once you're trained, that's really not a factor at all. You can get that consistent cheek weld every single time you pick up the rifle. You're gonna get your sight picture and you're not gonna have a problem with it. It's really just something that it takes a little bit of training and practice to get used to. But I think the LPVO platform is perfect. It gets you that 1 power, but also has the magnification. It gets you out to those farther distances, combines all of those things in one, and as I mentioned, it's like a jack of all trades. So that's all for the video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I didn't really plan on going into that so much with the LPVOs in general. This video is supposed to be about this LPVO specifically, but it's okay. We covered a little bit of information out there that may be useful and helpful to those of you that are beginners out there and new to this and have no clue what an LPVO is. Hopefully this video answered that for you and maybe gave you an example of something you should look into. This optic right here is a great buy, solid value for the price, and would highly recommend it. If you guys enjoyed this video, leave a like on it and leave a comment down below with your thoughts. Do you have LPVOs already? Do you have one that you like even better than this one? Do you have this one specifically, or are you considering getting an LPVO and this video maybe hopefully changed your mind and brought them into your consideration and now you're thinking about looking at one? If you want to see other videos like this one going forward, subscribe to the channel to see more. We drop a video every single Sunday at 12 p.m. Eastern time, and I hope to see you guys around for more. I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a great day.